It began as just another quiet evening in Philadelphia, a city that carries both beauty and heartbreak in equal measure. But for one young woman, that night would mark the end of her story and the start of a mystery that would grip an entire community. Her name was Kata Scott, a 23-year-old with dreams that stretched far beyond the streets she called home. Friends remember her as ambitious, full of laughter, and impossible to ignore. Kata wanted more out of life. She wanted to be seen, to make her mark, maybe even wear the Miss USA crown one day. But on that October night, everything changed. Kata didn't come home. At first, her friends thought maybe she needed space, that she'd turn up in a few hours. But hours turned to days, and silence became the only thing louder than their worry. Her phone went dead, her social media stopped, and her bright presence, the girl who never went a day without checking in, suddenly vanished. Something was wrong. Police began piecing together her last known movements. Surveillance footage showed Kata leaving work at a nursing home, clocking out earlier than usual. She was alone, carrying her bag, and from that moment on, no one ever saw her again. But this wasn't just any disappearance. It was strange, almost too quiet, like someone wanted it that way. As detectives dug deeper, a name kept surfacing: Kian King. To outsiders, he seemed charming, even likable. But those who knew him knew there was something darker beneath the surface. He and Kata had history, a complicated, on-again, off-again relationship that had been filled with tension and secrets. They were close, sometimes too close, and despite everything, they never seemed to cut ties completely. The last text messages between them painted a picture that made everyone uneasy. They weren't arguments, they were playful, almost flirtatious. In one message, Kata had joked about Kian kidnapping her again. He replied, "Better be up to it." Hours later, she was gone. That message would later become one of the key pieces in the investigation. The community's reaction was instant. Flyers went up. Hashtags spread. But unlike many missing person cases that fade into obscurity, Kata's story struck a nerve. Maybe it was because she was young, hopeful, and full of potential. Maybe it was because deep down everyone knew something about this didn't feel random. As police continued to investigate, they discovered that Kian wasn't a stranger to trouble. He had a long record, multiple arrests for assault, most of them involving women. He'd been in and out of jail, bailed out, and somehow always managed to slip through the cracks. Each time, he'd walk free. And each time, someone else got hurt. It was a cycle that no one had stopped until Kata disappeared. But what really shocked people was how unprepared the system seemed to deal with someone like him. Reports of violence, harassment, and abuse had piled up over the years. Women had filed complaints. Friends had warned others. Yet time after time, Kian was released, like a ticking bomb waiting to go off again. When news of Kata's disappearance broke, some of those same women came forward, saying they weren't surprised. "We tried to warn people," one woman said. "He's dangerous. He doesn't stop." Detectives now had to move carefully. They had motive, they had history, but what they didn't have was solid proof. And then, rumors began to spread. Whispers about another woman. Someone who might have known more than she was letting on. Her name was Gabby. At first, she seemed like a footnote in the story, someone who had once known Kian, maybe even dated him. But soon, people started connecting dots. Videos appeared online showing Gabby wearing one of Kian's hoodies, the same hoodie he was last seen wearing around the time Kata vanished. She claimed she didn't know anything about his past or his crimes. But people who knew her back in Philly told a different story. They said Gabby had been in trouble before, for the same kind of things Kian had been accused of. Screenshots surfaced of texts between Gabby and her mother, messages that hinted she had been running around with that boy, even after he'd been wanted by police. The more the truth unraveled, the murkier it became. Was Gabby just caught in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or was she part of something darker, an accomplice in a story that had already gone too far? Meanwhile, Kata's family was still holding on to hope. Her mother refused to believe her daughter was gone. Every morning she'd call Kata's phone, praying one day she'd hear her voice again. Her friends organized searches. They combed through abandoned lots, parks, and back alleys, anywhere a clue might be hiding. But days turned to weeks. Leads dried up. And with every passing day, the trail got colder. Still, one thing was clear. Kata Scott didn't just vanish. Someone made sure she did. The deeper investigators looked into Kata Scott's disappearance, the stranger things began to feel. It wasn't just a missing person case anymore. It was a puzzle made of half-truths, secrets, and people who all seemed to know just enough to look guilty, but not enough to prove anything. Detectives started retracing every step of Kata's last day, from the moment she clocked out of work to the second her phone went dark. Security footage confirmed she'd left alone, walking toward the bus stop at 9:42 p.m. But there was something else on that tape. A dark-colored Nissan parked across the street, headlights off, engine running. For weeks it meant nothing. Then, during a traffic camera sweep, the same car showed up again 2 blocks from Kian King's apartment. At first, police couldn't place the vehicle. It wasn't registered in Kian's name, but after tracing the plate, it came back to someone they already knew, Gabby Mendez. When detectives questioned her, she denied everything. She claimed she hadn't spoken to Kian in months, that she didn't even live in Philadelphia anymore. But cell tower records told another story. Her phone had pinged in the same 3-mile radius as Kata's, just minutes before Kata's phone stopped transmitting. Suddenly, Gabby wasn't just a name, she was a potential link. Meanwhile, Kian King had vanished too. Friends said he'd skipped town the very next morning. His apartment was stripped bare, clothes gone, electronics missing, even his dog had disappeared. But he'd left behind something odd, a torn notebook page taped to the fridge that read, "Sometimes you gotta disappear to start over." To some, that sounded like guilt. To others, it sounded like desperation. The press jumped on it instantly. News outlets began calling it the boyfriend vanishing case. Reporters camped outside the police station, demanding answers. Talk shows debated whether Kian was a fugitive or just afraid of being framed. Online, the story went viral. Reddit threads dissected screenshots, TikTok users posted theories, and YouTube true crime channels analyzed every second of surveillance footage. But as the noise grew louder, so did the contradictions. One former coworker claimed Kata had confided that Kian wouldn't let her go. Another said she'd seen them laughing together just days before the disappearance. One friend swore that Kata planned to end things for good. Another insisted she'd still loved him. Everyone had a version of the truth, and that made it nearly impossible to find the real one. Detectives focused next on digital evidence. They pulled text messages, DMs, and deleted files from Kata's iCloud backup. Buried among ordinary conversations was a thread titled simply, "Just in case." It contained voice notes and screenshots, all time-stamped within a week of her disappearance. In one recording, Kata sounded shaken. "He showed up outside my job again. I told him to stop, but he just stood there, smiling like it was funny. If anything happens to me, tell my mom I love her." That single clip changed everything. Within hours, police upgraded the case from missing person to possible foul play. They issued a nationwide warrant for Kian King and listed Gabby Mendez as a person of interest. But finding them wasn't easy. Both phones were off, both bank accounts untouched. It was as if they'd evaporated. Then, a break, one that no one saw coming. A truck driver passing through Maryland spotted an abandoned Nissan on the shoulder of I-95. When state police arrived, the car was empty, but inside they found a duffel bag. In it were women's clothes, a pair of sneakers that matched Kata's size, and a half-burned photo of her and Kian taken months earlier. DNA results would later confirm that at least 2 people had handled those items, Kata Scott and Kian King. That's when the media frenzy exploded again. Everyone wanted to know, where was Kata now? Was she still alive? And where were Kian and Gabby? In the middle of that chaos, Kata's family held a candlelight vigil. Her mother stood before hundreds of people, her voice trembling. "If anyone knows where my baby is, please say something. Don't protect him. Don't protect her. Protect the truth." The video of her plea went viral overnight. It wasn't just a local tragedy anymore. It was national. Celebrities reposted the story. Activists demanded accountability, and strangers across the country joined search efforts. Meanwhile, back in Philadelphia, detectives followed another lead, a credit card charge at a motel in Richmond, Virginia, made with Kian King's name 2 days after Cotta vanished. Security footage showed Kian checking in but not alone. A woman with long hair and a hoodie pulled low followed behind him. Though the footage was grainy, the outline looked familiar. Investigators believed it was Gabby. The next morning, staff found the room empty, bed unmade, bathroom light still on. In the trash, a receipt from a nearby gas station time-stamped 3:17 a.m. The destination written in pen across the top read, Charlotte, North Carolina. It felt like they were always 2 steps behind. Still, each discovery painted a clearer picture, a story of obsession, control, and the kind of love that blurs into danger. Those who'd known Kian described him as magnetic but volatile. He could charm a room, one ex-girlfriend told police, but the second you made him feel small, he'd snap. Investigators began suspecting that Cotta might have tried to finally leave, and Kian couldn't handle it. Then came another twist. A woman in North Carolina contacted authorities claiming she'd seen a man matching Kian's description at a diner outside Charlotte. He'd been with a woman, she said, but it wasn't Gabby. It was someone who looked frightened, silent, barely eating. When police arrived hours later, the pair were gone. Whether that woman was Cotta or someone else, no one could prove. But it reignited hope. Maybe she was still alive. The search extended into the Carolinas. Billboards went up. The FBI joined in. Behind the scenes, digital forensics experts worked day and night to rebuild deleted data from Kian's social accounts. Among the fragments they recovered was a single, chilling draft post he'd never sent. Some people say love is forever. They never tell you how much it costs. To investigators, it sounded less like poetry and more like a confession. Still, they needed evidence, not emotion.
So they turned back to Gabby.
When her friends were interviewed, one mentioned she'd recently sold her phone and switched to a new number. Another admitted Gabby had been acting paranoid, convinced that police were listening. But paranoia couldn't hide forever. A month later, Gabby was spotted at a bus terminal in Atlanta. She was arrested on a minor charge, using a fake ID. But when detectives ran her prints, the Philadelphia warrant lit up the screen. She was brought in for questioning. At first, she played innocent.
Said she didn't know anything.
Said she hadn't seen Kian since summer. But the moment detectives showed her the surveillance still from the Richmond motel, her demeanor changed. She stopped talking. Then she asked for a lawyer. Though she refused to speak, her belongings